You know those kind of comfort games where no matter how many times you play through them, you never get sick of them? Like an ungodly amount of times? Well, I personally have a lot of games that would fall into that category. Maybe it's the nostalgia of simpler times, hiding in pillow forts, playing video games after school, or maybe these games are just great games. Probably a little bit of both. In this series that absolutely nobody asked for, we're gonna explore some of these comfort games. What's on the shelf today? Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. This game was my first introduction to Kirby as a child. Although we had an NES at home, we had a very limited assortment of games. And by the time I was old enough to play, or was actually given opportunities by my brothers to play, it was on its last legs and barely working without some pretty intense fiddling around and blowing of cartridges. Nightmare in Dreamland was a remake of Kirby's Adventure for the NES, which I would end up playing emulated versions of later on in life, but I still prefer the remake. The studio behind Kirby, HAL Laboratory, was founded in 1980. I remember seeing the HAL logo with the egg dog in the intro of the game and thinking some guy named HAL must have named the company, but the name has a funnier story behind it. The studio wanted to show that they were innovative and ahead of the curve, so they took the name IBM and literally went to the next letter ahead for each, thus making them one step ahead of IBM. Unfortunately, they were in pretty bad shape leading up to the release of Kirby, as they found themselves between a rock and a hard place. They didn't have the time or resources to spend working on games until they were actually finished and ready for release, but if they released the games as is, they wouldn't sell well because they weren't very good. It's kind of funny how these days games can be almost unplayable on release, but I digress. Their position at the time left them desperate for the next game to do well, and sometimes desperation breeds miracles. At the brink of bankruptcy, they were offered help from Nintendo. This help was on the condition that one of the HAL employees, Satoru Iwata, would be appointed as the president of HAL. He would eventually go on to become the president of Nintendo, which helped to formulate the close tie between Nintendo and HAL. With newfound support and a determination for success, the studio released the first game in the Kirby series, Kirby in Dreamland. And it was very positively received, selling over 1 million copies in the first year of release. To date, the game has sold over 5 million copies and reigns as the top-selling game in the Kirby franchise. This success set the studio up well for their future releases, and a mindset that every release going forward would also be a 1 million copy seller. That brought the release of the second game in the franchise, Kirby's Adventure, which brought the introduction of copy abilities, for which Kirby is known. The game begins with a storybook-esque cutscene stating that the once peaceful world of Dreamland was now in great peril. Usually in Dreamland, dreams would flow through the fountain of dreams, which collected the hopes of all living things in Dreamland. But suddenly one day, nobody was able to dream, because as Kirby thought, King Dedede was bathing in the fountain of dreams and had even taken the star rod, which was the source of the fountain's power. He had even broken it up into small pieces to give to his underlings. Now it was up to Kirby to collect all of the pieces back and restore the power of the fountain, and with it, the peaceful dreams to Dreamland. Or so Kirby thought. After successfully collecting all the pieces and showing off some pretty sick dance moves, Kirby was finally able to replace the rod on the fountain, much to the dismay of King Dedede. But rather than the return of peaceful slumbers in Dreamland, the true bad guy behind it all, aptly named Nightmare, appears in the sky. It was he who had originally corrupted the Fountain of Dreams. In fact, King Dedede's destruction of the Star Rod was an attempt to stop Nightmare's plan to spread evil dreams across Dreamland. And Kirby's misunderstanding caused Nightmare to begin his takeover. This leads to the final battle, at first taking place in the sky, before landing on planet Popstar to finish the task, ridding the Star Rod and Fountain of evil and returning peace to the dreams of Dreamland. The gameplay is pretty much the same as the original NES version with some minor changes, including the overall level of difficulty, small changes to some levels and enemies, and some of the copy abilities that you can use as Kirby, such as the new ability of Wheel Kirby to roll across water without sinking. The game is a pretty straightforward 2D platformer with the ability for players to move left, right, up, and down across a single plane. But Kirby also offers the ability to fly by inhaling air and turning himself into basically a balloon. The game is divided into different levels with cute alliterative names like Yogurt Yard and Butter Building, each having several doors to enter into specific stages. Different stages present different enemies for Kirby to face, usually coinciding with the theme of the area. Icy or snowy stages featuring freeze abilities, or levels in the clouds having tornado or parasol abilities. The game features 25 different copy abilities which came directly from the original Kirby's Adventure. Players will come across various items throughout the game, including power-ups like the 1-Up, Invincible Candy, Maxim Tomatoes, and Medicine. Players are able to go back to previous stages as well as accessing mini-games and museums through these doors within each world. Museums allow Kirby to copy abilities of the enemies featured. The mini-games, or sub-games as they're referred to, include Bomb Rally, a modified game of hot potato using a bomb and frying pans where missing a shot ends in an explosion. Kirby's Air Grind, a racing game where you need to grind to increase speed, but avoid grinding over the rough rails. Samurai Kirby, a game of quick draw where the first to strike is the winner. And the Arena, a battle arena used for gaining copy abilities that are not available inside of the museum. And you also get a nice little tomato prize. After completing the game, there are more additional modes to unlock. The Boss Endurance mode, which is exactly what it sounds like, has the player defeat all of the bosses featured in the game consecutively. Extra Game is a mode that increases the difficulty of the game by replacing certain enemies with stronger ones, similar to the Extra mode in Kirby's Adventure, but this time with the ability to save their progress. Beating this mode will unlock the Meta Nightmare mode, where you are able to play as Meta Knight, Kirby's rival who you encounter throughout the game at various points. Playing in this mode leaves you with less health points, no copy abilities, and no saving. Another new addition to the remake was the introduction of a multiplayer mode, allowing up to 4 players to play cooperatively. Both the story mode and boss endurance mode are playable cooperatively, while sub-games are played competitively between the players. Players are tied to each other in terms of the doors, automatically entering into them if any one player does. But players cannot enter doors unless all the players are grouped together nearby. With an update in technology, the move from 8-bit to 32-bit graphics allowed for more detail to be added to the familiar worlds, as well as upgrades to the visuals of Kirby himself and the copy abilities, including adding hats for most of the copy abilities. Across the 8 levels, which again are mostly named with cute, alliterative food names, players will find themselves in various different environments, ranging from warm and sunny seasides to puffy white clouds. Funnily enough, many of the level's visuals have few or no reference to the names. Definitely no yogurt in Yogurt Yard. Although Kirby is outside, so I guess it could be a yard with really big mountains. Shading, improved backgrounds, and textural details help to bring the worlds to life in ways that the original had been limited. The soundtrack of this game absolutely slaps. There is no question about that. Nightmare in Dreamland maintains the music found in the original Kirby's Adventure, but makes use of the upgrades in technology to bring in different instrumentation. In doing so, the songs are able to push into the distinct vibes of each level more effectively. For example, with the Ice Cream Island theme, the move from the classic old school synth sounds to the steel drum-esque synth for a portion of the main melody helps to give off the island vibes reflected in the level. In the Grape Garden theme, the ability to use softer synth sounds compared to the more grating ones of the NES version reflect more accurately the vibes of adventuring through fluffy clouds. What it may lack in depth, it makes up for with fun and lightheartedness. While it's certainly not the #1 best game in the world, it's always a good time, alone or with friends. Just one little pink guy on a mission to have a good sleep. If you enjoyed listening to me ramble about Kirby, go ahead and leave a like and comment down below your thoughts on the game. Was it also a childhood staple of yours? Which game in the series is your favorite? You can also check out the casual replay of the game that I did with my brother to freshen up my memory on the game before making this video. It will be linked in the description. You can also hit that subscribe button if you'd like to find out what else is on the shelf. See ya!